Over the course of my channel's history, I've been slowly covering my favorite thing of all time. Resident Evil. Not Operation Raccoon City, but Resident Evil, the classic series. We recently got to RE4 in my mainline retrospective video series. And yeah, that video is an excruciatingly long love letter to a game that not only changed its respective franchise, but the games industry as a whole. RE4 is kind of a swan song for Resident Evil's classic series. It still feels like a Japanese-made Capcom game, even though its mechanics, pacing, and gameplay flow were so radically different to everything that came before it, opening up a world of possibilities for video games. A well of untapped potential, if you will. Nowadays, that well sure is tapped out, and so am I. Now that we've got that video out of the way, we're technically on the cusp of getting to games like RE5, 6, and the Revelation sub-series, an era of Resident Evil that I like to call the Action Series. The classic series are a collection of games charting the years from 1996 to 2005. Apart from the mainline titles that we've already covered, there were also a handful of Resident Evil side games in that span of time. And today we're going to be talking about the very first one of those side games. A very brave, bold, beautiful, and divisive video game. That being
Resident Evil Survivor.
Resident Evil Survivor, or as it's known in Japan, Gun Survivor, is a first-person shooter action-adventure game. It's also a game that's always had a negative reputation built up around it. Survivor is admittedly very low budget and generally lower quality compared to the RE titles that came before it. When it came out, gaming journalists dunked on it, Resident Evil fans trashed it, and I personally played it twice, and never again, until 2016 when I found it in the back of a cardboard box while moving. You can tell I didn't really play this game a whole lot because my copy is immaculate compared to the loving wear and tear on my copies of the original trilogy. The jewel case is literally cracked for like all of them. So yeah, Survivor just lived in the back of that cardboard box for me. In his book, An Itchy Tasty Unofficial History of Resident Evil, author and very good friend of mine, Alex Aniel, interviews every single creative mind behind each entry of the classic series. From guys like Shinji Mikami, Hideki Kamiya, and Kazuhiro Aoyama, just to name a few. The book is a fantastic page-turner filled with so much information that sheds tons of light on all of the classic games' development histories. It's genuinely interesting. It's like one of my videos, just with way more first-hand information. I actually cite this book a lot in my previous videos, before it ever came out. Thanks, Alex. However, when you get to the Survivor chapter of this book, something weird happens. You may or may not be surprised by what I'm about to tell you, but there isn't any info on this game's development history. If you look in the game's credits, most of the staff that made this game use fake names like this is some kind of 1980s NES title. Survivor came out in the year 2000, by the way, and for us here in America, it actually came out after Code Veronica. Can you believe that? The only real info that Alex was able to dig up was that this game's development was outsourced to a company called Tosei Co., a video game factory with a long resume. Apparently these guys aren't too keen about talking about any of their trade secrets, so unfortunately we may never get any juicy secrets on Survivor's creation. It's kind of funny because if you do even a little bit of research on Resident Evil Survivor, you'll find groundbreaking facts like Capcom wanted to reuse art assets. Capcom wanted to use a light gun for the game's gameplay. Wow. Really? That's so cool, dude. Even if this game's entire birth, life, and death was clearly printed out and mailed to the homes of every US citizen, that wouldn't remove the Joan Jett-sized bad reputation it was branded with since its release. Guys, even the angry video game nerd made a video about this game. The guy that invented my career.
I mean, you'd rather superglue your asshole shut than play that game.
Well, AVGN, if that is your real name, I'm Susie Hunter, the Resident Evil girl, and I'll have you know that I get the final say on important Capcom matters such as this. So without further ado, let's see if this game really is a diarrhea dog shit. What the hell? Salazar? How did you...
Miss Susie, we've jacked the line.
Has this ever happened to you? Are you done with demonic Napoleon jacking all of your lines? Well, maybe consider signing up for NordVPN. With Nord, you can take major safety precautions like hiding your IP address from malicious hackers, and actual fun things like changing your digital location to access region-locked content on the web. A brand new feature for Nord is its enhanced threat protection system. You can have it running even while the VPN is disabled, essentially keeping you covered on your normal internet connection. One more layer of protection never hurt anyone, so take control of your online adventures today with NordVPN. You can get a 2-year plan at a huge discount, plus 1 extra month absolutely free when you go to nordvpn.com/spherehunter. It's also risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/spherehunter, or just click the link in the description down below. It's just that easy to secure your connection. No more prying eyes on this line.
Damn you, NordVPN! Enjoy your makeshift victory for now. We will cross paths again. That is a promise.
Yeah, get out of here, you little bastard. What do you think you are? Jacking the line. Go jack off. A common misconception with Survivor's gameplay is that a lot of people think that this title is an on-rails light gun shooter. While you can use a light gun to play this game, it is completely playable on a normal PS1 controller. Survivor is in fact a first-person shooter, not a single rail in sight. You have full control over your character's movements, unlike games like House of the Dead or Time Crisis. This game still uses tank controls, so left and right rotate you, and up and down move you forward and back. I'm pretty sure older first-person shooters used a similar control style with semi-auto aim, a scheme known today as legacy control. Some modern shooters still have this option, which is pretty cool. The issue that arises in terms of Survivor's playability is that you can't move while shooting. The game still plays like RE, requiring you to stop, aim with R1, and then fire with X, all while manually aiming with the D-pad. As you can imagine, D-pad aim isn't very fun, and the devs knew this because as you fire away, you sort of lightly lock onto enemies. Hitting L1 re-engages your aim, like classic REs, but in this game's case, it also points you towards items and doors. This helps when playing with the patented Namco gun con. It's weird how you can't move and shoot, especially when your starting pistol has infinite ammo. Other discoverable guns have limited ammo that you have to collect. These act more like special weapons for special monsters, aka bosses. I kinda wish Tosei went the route of GoldenEye instead of trying to mix in classic RE mechanics. It doesn't work super well on a controller. It's playable, but not natural. I couldn't even begin to imagine someone who has issues with tank controls even attempting to play this game. Another small weirdo detail about Survivor is that you pick up items and open doors just by walking into them. You no longer have to press a button to do those things, which just screams arcade game. What's also needlessly arcadey about Survivor is its save and live system. When you die, you have a limited amount of time to hit continue. You also have limited lives, which is dumb for a game that never released in arcades. Need I remind you, Survivor is a home console exclusive. There's also no saving your progress through the story. You absolutely have to beat the game in one shot. You can only save if you've run out of lives or finish the game. So it kind of works like Dead Rising, where if you gather up weapons, ammo, and heals in one playthrough, die, and then save the game, you can retry from the beginning with all of that equipment. This sounds insane, right? Well, Survivor was actually designed to be completed in about 2 to 3 hours, and even faster if you know what you're doing. This is an afternoon kind of game. I often wonder if Capcom told Tosei that they were making an arcade game because almost everything about it is arcadey in its nature. Nothing shows that more than the game's level structure. The title's replayability comes in the multiple paths you can take per playthrough. It's kinda like House of the Dead. Depending on the path you take at the start of the game, you'll be locked into a scenario where you'll see different areas and fight unique enemies. The path that you choose will also branch off into other pathways, leading to slightly different story events. We'll talk about those later. I actually love this aspect of RE Survivor. It works really well in creating a sense of freshness with each playthrough, and it makes the game feel a lot larger than it actually is. Most of the enemies you'll be tangling with are lifted straight from RE1 and 2. It's pretty cool seeing these familiar zombies, lickers, spiders, and hunters from a first-person perspective. Seeing all their classic animations play out is fun. That fun wears off pretty quickly, however, when you realize that maybe these creatures were never meant to be seen from this perspective. Zombies animate super weird, especially when getting shot. Lickers will sometimes hit you with their claws from an extended range or just miss completely. And oh my god, the hunters are just horrible. They do that thing from RE1 where they glue themselves to your back if you're trying to run away, and it looks so bad in first person. This version of the hunter is one of the most annoying enemies in the entire series. You have to mag dump these guys before they even get a chance to attack. Reserve your shotgun for these guys, trust me. By the way, this game has a lot of guns. There are like 4 pistols that all act differently, a shotgun, a grenade launcher with multiple ammo types, and a magnum. What sucks is there isn't a reload button in-game. You have to combine the ammo with the gun on the horrible inventory screen. Seriously, there's no manual sorting like the previous entries, so whatever items you find get randomly thrown into this thing, and it quickly becomes a chore scrolling through looking for a particular item. At least the reload animations are cute. I really like seeing and fighting the enemies, but it can be so hard at times based purely on how janky this game feels to play. And if you've played a lot of PS1 games, like myself, you'll know that finding a janky PS1 game, like one that feels unpolished, is usually pretty hard to come by because back in the day we didn't have content updates or patches to fix this kind of stuff. We just had to live with it forever. And I'm still living with it. I'm playing this game right now. I think most of my complaints with this game's control feel stem from having to play without the controller it was designed for, which brings us to a rather uncomfortable topic that we unfortunately have to discuss. At its release, Survivor launched with GunCon support in Japan. US players never got to use this controller back in the day, however. I've literally never held a GunCon. I don't know what the controls are or even how to use that thing for Survivor. I can only go off what other people upload on YouTube. So why didn't America get this option? Well, it's widely believed that as a result of the tragedy that was the Columbine high school shooting, Capcom pulled GunCon support to avoid any controversies with this game's initial release in the West. This horrible event happened a year prior to Survivor's release, but if you were around back then, you'd know that Columbine sent shockwaves across the country. The effects of that nightmare are still being felt to this day. The undying political arguments of violence in video games causing violence in real life took off in a big way around this time. As we've all seen throughout the years, with loads of scientific evidence that disprove any negative effects violent video games may have on people's minds, the conversation at the time and for many years afterwards was incredibly strong. Tons of people still believe that video games make kids violent. I actually asked my friend Alex, the guy I mentioned before, if this was the definitive reasoning for why Capcom's higher-ups pulled the GunCon. In all of his research, he was told by guys like Kamiya and Aoyama that they believe this was the case. And if there's anyone to trust on this particular topic, it'd be the guys that actually made some of these games for Capcom back in the day. Sadly, as I'm writing this part of the video, we just had another school shooting here in America, a shooting that has a death count higher than that of Columbine's. I gotta say, it doesn't really seem like removing a gun-shaped toy controller from a video game stopped any mass shootings since Columbine. Destroying or outlawing video games isn't the cure to mental illness, teen rage, isolation, and an overall lack of community that often fuels mass shootings. So obviously, we need to figure this out in the real world and leave art out of the equation, especially when it comes to the well-being of kids. We need to look elsewhere to solve this problem, guys, starting with real-world gun laws and seeing what the hell parents aren't doing for their kids. I'm sorry, I really didn't expect to get this real when talking about Resident Evil Survivor of all games. But now that we've gotten that really depressing part of this game's history out of the way, let's lighten the mood a bit. Survivor's story is absolutely insane. The adventure begins with our main character, an unknown man, waking up from a helicopter crash with amnesia. Before regaining consciousness, we see another guy dangling from the aforementioned downed chopper.
You're not going to get away.
My head aches and I can't remember anything. My only hope is this gun. Let's go, mystery man. Checking the body of the man who fell from the helicopter, we find a pair of dog tags with the name Ark Thompson written on them. Poor Ark. He never knew what hit him. Our leading man is attacked by a zombie as he investigates. Dealing with the monster, we make our way forward, choosing one of 3 doors. This is the first branch you can choose. You can either go through a theater, restaurant, or church. Each of these paths are simple run-and-gun gauntlets that have different amounts of enemies to deal with and a basic key hunt to progress. Getting past one of these areas and heading out onto the streets, we hear a phone ringing.
Vincent.
Who is this? Vincent? Who's that? Wait. Am I Vincent?
Vincent, you are a murderer. A murderer.
A murderer? What are you talking about? Answer me! Who did I kill?
It's probably a great time to mention this. Survivor's voice acting totally gives RE1's a run for its money, and it only gets worse from here, if you can believe that. So our main character is a killer named Vincent. How ominous. We're playing as the villain of an RE game? Now that's pretty freaking cool. The next set of areas are the second branch of paths, and it's here where the story is set in motion depending on which area you pick. If you choose the arcade route, you fight probably the most bizarre enemy type in the series, the Cleaners, which are guys that look like stubby humans but are actually controlled BOWs in human combat gear. They even fire guns at you. They aren't very good at it, but at least they're trying. My favorite path to go down is the hospital path because it sets in motion the most ridiculous gameplay challenge. While exploring the hospital, you gun down a lot of zombies from floor to floor. Collect keys, open doors, read files. It's all very straightforward. But then a frickin' T-103 Tyrant shows up. Yeah, it was pretty scary seeing Mr. X this close up back in the day, but surprisingly enough, he goes down fairly easy. It's pretty anticlimactic. Eventually, we find a manhole opener and head down into the sewers. Underground, we find a secret hideaway. In this shack, we also discover a picture of Vincent. It's us, giving further evidence to our character being the villain of this game. Okay. I see the math equation, I'm doing the math, but it ain't mathin'. If this guy has amnesia, and I personally haven't seen him look in a mirror, how does he even know what he looks like? How does he just think this man in the photo is him? Anyway, as this is happening, a young kid walks in on Vincent, having a panic attack, and runs away. Chasing after him, we find ourselves in a prison. In one of the prison cell blocks, we find a diary of a young prisoner. The file is almost the length of a novel, as it describes Umbrella kidnapping young men from all across the world. Each cell has the bodies of young prisoners held within. They're all dead. In the file, we read about Umbrella employees taking these kids out to have fun at arcades and bars. Sometimes, certain kids will go missing or completely disappear without a trace. The boy this journal belongs to talks about overhearing a conversation one night while at the arcade. Factory workers muttering things about the prisoners having their skulls cut into to extract a certain piece of their brain for some kind of experiment. Sheesh. Hearing that, this young man decides to gather up as many prisoners as he can for a great escape, using ropes to rappel out of the prison via a search tower. This kid also mentions that if Vincent catches wind of their plan, he'd most likely execute every prisoner. Guess that explains why they're all dead. So far, the game is doing an okay job at building up the dark mystery surrounding our main character. After finding a rope and rappelling out of the prison, we're attacked by the Tyrant once again. It goes down fairly easily, but before we can celebrate, we encounter it again, this time in the back room of a nightclub. Wait a minute, so every tyrant we've fought so far has been a different tyrant. Interesting. But not as interesting as this nightclub. Heaven's Night? Are we in Silent Hill right now? Guess that would explain all the tyrants. This town really is manifesting my worst nightmares. Leaving the building, we find ourselves in front of the city's main Umbrella Tower.
Umbrella. So this is where the city is controlled from. Oh! What's happening to me?
You doing okay there, buddy? The Umbrella building is a mess. It looks like a bomb hit it. Zombies and other creatures have taken over, and as Vincent ascends the tower, he enters a very fancy office with a security system. On one of the monitors, we see a little girl in the building's actual security mainframe. But before Vincent can communicate with her, another tyrant bursts through the wall. Taking it out and grabbing a keycard, we get to explore the rest of the building. Reaching the security mainframe, we hear probably the most insane dialogue in the series.
What?
Vincent? It's me, your mother.
My mother?
Vincent, please, listen to your mother. I want you to leave Umbrella. I want you to stop performing those terrible crimes and just come back home.
This game's voice acting is somehow so much worse than RE1, but is also at the same time phenomenal. Vincent finally meets up with the previously seen young girl, but before we can get any answers out of her about who she is, why she's here, or what's going on in this city, her older brother, Lot, the young boy from the sewers, comes between Vincent and his sister, Lily. Lot tells Lily to run, and together the kids make off as we follow after them. Another tyrant blocks our exit, but once again we take it down. At this point, the endless amount of X's was starting to get old for me. Using an elevator, we escape the building out of its underground car park. Emerging back on the street, we see the kids jumping down into an aqueduct. Taking out a few creatures, we finally catch up to our elusive pair at their home. The kids are hiding inside, but it's here where things start to become a bit clearer. Lily tells Vincent that Lot is looking for an escape route out of the city from the nearby factory.
He told me that he could find a way to escape from this place inside the factory. But there are tons and tons of scary monsters there.
What?
Please! We've already lost Mum and Dad. You've got to help my brother.
I may have been a bad person, but that was before. That's not who I am now. I will save these two kids. I swear it.
Oh my god, what a guy. He just won't quit. It's time to head to the factory. The streets are filled with more creatures than ever. I do enjoy seeing the slow buildup of this once peaceful city getting more overcome by the BOWs. It's like RE2 and 3, just enhanced because the game takes place in first person. I don't know, I think it's kinda cool. The paths to the factory have a nice progression. Cable car to a dark forest, and an underground atmospheric tunnel that has some genuine horror vibes. Okay, you can't deny it, that's pretty good. We eventually find ourselves in front of an abandoned mansion, and inside we hear Lot calling out to us. Heading down a dark flight of stairs, we enter an iconic Resident Evil lab. What a surprise. That means we're in the end of the game, by the way. Down here, we're immediately jumped by not one, but two tyrants. Things are starting to heat up around here. Now there are two easily killable bullet sponges in our way. As we explore the lab, we gun down waves of zombies, lickers, IVs are introduced, and a few hunters. The actions per minute in the lab are insane. As we dig deeper, we figure out one part of this game's mystery. This lab and city we're in, by the way, we're actually on a remote island called Sheena Island, is the birthplace of the mass-produced T-103 tyrants. Explains why we fought so many of these guys. Fun fact, Umbrella dropped 6 T-103s and Nemesis into Raccoon City. They just went full psycho mode back then. After taking down one more tyrant, we find Lot, and we finally learn the truth about our boy Vincent.
It's not your fault. Vincent is the one who caused everything. Well, I mean,
You? What do you mean? You're the detective. Your name is Ark Thompson.
What? Really? I'm not Vincent? Then why did you run away from me?
Because I'm the one that told Vincent about you.
So Vincent is actually an undercover detective named Ark Thompson. Ark's on Sheena Island investigating a man named Vincent Goldman, the mastermind behind this factory and the production of these tyrants. Vincent just so happens to be the man we saw hanging from the helicopter at the start of the game. With Vincent's appearance not being widely known to the common townsfolk, Ark took it upon himself to impersonate him in the hopes of acquiring more information about Umbrella's schemes from the people who worked for the company. Lot, knowing who the real Vincent was, reported Ark to Umbrella security, and it was here where the real Vincent thought it would be a great idea to unleash some tyrants onto the island to weed out any other potential spies. This clearly didn't end well as the island fell into utter chaos. With the truth revealed, Ark tells Lot to go get Lily from their home as he clears a path to the lab's helipad. We also get another completely unhinged line read from Ark's voice actor.
That's right. At the request of my friend, Leon S. Kennedy, I came here to investigate. Oh, yes. I remember everything.
I don't think I have to tell you how absurdly corny it is that Ark happens to be besties with Leon. Like that's gonna win him any awards. I'm friends with Leon Kennedy. You're not special. Ark finds the master key to this facility and a pretty psychotic file detailing what it takes to produce a Mr. X. Cutting into a human brain to extract a chemical called noradrenaline, which is only produced at the height of fear. Couple this file with what we read in that young prisoner's journal, and you've got yourself a recipe for eternal nightmares. Umbrella, and more specifically Vincent, was kidnapping children and cutting their brains open while they were awake so they can be at their absolute terrified for this experiment. Good God, man, who wrote this game's story? Hitler? Survivor is like the weakest, goofiest, jankiest RE title, but it has the best backstory and lore. This is so compelling. Why can't we get this dark in the story through its cutscenes? Anyway, in the same room, we also discover a new special tyrant, Hypnos. I like how this one looks younger and more human compared to the RE1 and Nemesis variations. It works in continuing that dark story and theme mentioned earlier. As Ark makes a break for the exit, Vincent shows up again. He's alive. I guess not?
No!
The Hypnos tyrant is awake and blocking our path. After taking him down, we finally make it to a cable car where Lot and Lily are waiting. Together, our survivors arrive at the helipad, but before they can make their escape, Hypnos is back and looking a little beastly. There's no other way to say it. This boss fight fucking sucks. Even if you have tons of special ammo for your strong weapons, Hypnos tanks everything and hits really hard. You'll most likely have to run back and forth across the helipad getting a few shots in before having to turn around and running past him, exploiting his weak AI. It doesn't help that he has two forms in this fight, the second being even stronger than the first. Every time I play Survivor, I either run out of special ammo or have to do this little dance, or he combos me to death, forcing me to hear this over and over again. It takes forever to finally kill this guy, but once you do, that's it. The nightmare's over. Mission complete. It's time to go home.
It can't be! Get down!
Holy shit, Ark Thompson is hardcore. You want the rocket launcher ending? Ark gave you 2 heat-seeking missiles. I'm sure that'll never happen again in this series.
Your time's up, you son of a bitch.
So, that was something, wasn't it? On its face, Survivor is absolutely goofy. This voice acting is genuinely bad, in the most entertaining way imaginable. Ark Thompson kills like 100 tyrants, but still comes off like a total goofball idiot. I wish this game actually explored its tyrant birthing subplot in the game's main story content, but extremely cool subject matter getting restricted to optional files is a series-wide problem. At least in the new games, characters kinda comment on the files you read, but it can still suck. Maybe if one of the main characters was a candidate in the tyrant creation process that we save, it might have helped for creating a more compelling story. The multiple paths are really cool from a gameplay perspective, but it was very intentional on my part showing you guys the Vincent path, because the 2 others, the Andy and Cleaner's path, aren't as good in my opinion. Imagine playing through the game and a faceless hunk wannabe shows up at the very end like you should care. The Vincent path is cool, with the setup that you might actually be this horrible person, to having him show up at the end and getting killed by his ultimate creation, paying the biggest price for all of the lives he's taken, makes the most sense to me, over some trash bag clad rando or the local librarian coming to lecture you. I wish the paths and characters within them were all part of a larger continuous story, like a traditional RE game. A lot of people ask for a Code Veronica remake. Here comes my hot take of the century. I'd love to see Survivor get the reimagining treatment. Having the original game and its files fleshed out in a dark and disturbing story about people being harvested to create and fuel a horrible monster war economy that plays with the speed and FPS mechanics of RE Village, I think that would be pretty sick. There's a lot of potential for telling a mind-bending story, having a more realized amnesiac Ark Thompson finding evidence that points towards him being a cold-blooded killer, mind-altering flashbacks where he sees himself in the real Vincent's position based on previous investigations, getting mixed up in his own real memories and the evidence he's been finding. Ark basically tricking himself into thinking he did those horrible experiments, but now wanting to correct that by helping Lot and Lily, this time as two potential candidates in this tyrant experiment program. It could be really good. Again, my fanfiction aside, that's not what we got and probably will never get, but it's something I like to think about, okay? So yeah, Survivor's story isn't very good, like most things this game attempts to accomplish, but I really like the files. Don't look at me like that, don't make fun of me. Like I mentioned all the way at the start, when Survivor released, it was met with lots of justified negativity. The game is lacking, and if you put yourself back in its release year, Code Veronica had either just come out or was about to release depending on your region. Imagine playing Code Veronica and then playing this game. You'd understandably be like, what the hell, Capcom? What are you on about? Despite all of its negative press, Survivor went on to have its own little side series. The second entry was an actual arcade remake of Code Veronica, Survivor 2. This game is not good in any way, and I'll never make a video on it. Nemesis shows up, that's the big surprise. I'm sorry I spoiled it for you. The more notable sequel was Dead Aim, a PS2 light gun game that deserves its own video at some point. I'll save my thoughts on it when we get there. There's also a Dino Crisis game in the Survivor series, which is kinda weird. Again, we'll get to it when we get to it. RE0 also confirms the canonicity of Survivor by name-dropping Sheena Island in its intro. So yeah, Ark Thompson canonically kills about 20 tyrants. Badass. Hi there. Yeah, I'm dressed as Ada this time. I felt bad in my RE4 video when I said I was gonna dress like Ada, and then I lied and dressed like Ashley instead. But anyway, it's really weird because back in the day when I first played Survivor, I didn't like it, like, at all. I thought it was crap. I think the overwhelming negativity surrounding the game at the time definitely colored my perspective on it, because now, with so much time removed, I was really into Survivor this time. I really enjoyed my playthroughs. It's a charming, bite-sized, cringeworthy game that definitely doesn't overstay its welcome, but also isn't doing much to actually justify its existence. It's just kinda there, the black sheep of the classic series. I think if it released in arcades first and then got the PS1 home console port, people probably wouldn't be as hard on it as they were back in the day, because they'd recognize it as a fun, replayable arcade game and not a full-priced, single-player experience. Don't get me wrong, Survivor is undeniably ass! But I kinda like it.
Shut up, bitch!
Get off the stage.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Can you believe it? We survived Survivor. I'm so excited personally that I got this video off my chest, because I did not realize that I was gonna actually enjoy Resident Evil Survivor for what it was. But then again, I'm also in the most unique position where I have the patience and time to put up with its bullshit. So I understand if you don't, but I hope this video was able to shed some light on the game for you regardless. Anyway, if you like this video, please consider subscribing and checking out my Patreon link down in the description. Big thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring the video, and to my best friend Josh the Medic for voicing Salazar. That was a hell of a time recording that audio, as y'all can imagine. But anyway, I'll see you guys very soon with another cool video. Alright, have a great day. Later.